Hello and welcome to another edition of Afrika Speaks, the show where Africa's voice takes center stage. My name is Victoria Wilson, and this week's edition, we mark 50 years since Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara, Africa's last colony. In Spotlight, we take a closer look at this half-century of resistance, resilience, and betrayal, and what it reveals about the unfinished work of African liberation. Here's more.
Hi there. Today on Afrika Speaks, we turn our spotlight on Africa's last unresolved colonial question, Western Sahara. As the Sahrawi people mark 50 years of resistance to Moroccan occupation, it is essential that the people of Africa reflect on the dynamics of imperialism and resource plunder that are the foundation of this occupation. It is also essential that we ask tough questions of ourselves and the rest of the people of the world when it comes to the question of solidarity with the people of Sahara. In 1975, as the Spanish colonizers withdrew, Moroccan forces occupied the bulk of Western Sahara in the face of fierce resistance by the Polisario Front. The liberation movement of Sahrawi people, the same year, the International Court of Justice affirmed the Sahrawi people's right for a free and fair referendum. The Sahrawi people's right to self-determination has been upheld by the UN, the AU, and a number of other bodies. Most importantly, it is reflected in the decades-long struggle by the Polisario Front-led Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic for freedom. When a ceasefire was agreed in 1991, a UN mission called MINURSO was set explicitly to facilitate the referendum. However, the international community has turned a blind eye to the demands of the Sahrawi people who have suffered mass displacement and exile while maintaining their resources. Instead of compelling Morocco to conduct a referendum, they have let its companies extract resources such as phosphate and fish, which belong to the Sahrawi people. Over the past few years, led by the United States, a number of countries have accepted Morocco's so-called autonomy plan, which would enable it to retain control over key aspects of the Sahrawi people's lives, such as defense and foreign affairs. Morocco was able to achieve this by normalizing ties with Israel and acting as agent for Western interests in the continent. Even African countries like Ghana and Kenya have accepted this principle. As the Sahrawi people mark 50 years of their occupation, the UN Security Council approved their autonomy plan. Only Russia, China, Pakistan, and Algeria refused to go along. This is not simply a territorial dispute, but an embodiment of colonial capitalism. Land and resources seized, people subjugated, and international institutions rendered powerless by the interests of the powerful. The UN mission, or MINURSO in particular, has failed when confronted with the interests of the powerful colonial countries. In fact, MINURSO is almost the only modern UN peacekeeping mission without a capacity to monitor human rights. Deprived of their resources, land and political rights, the Sahrawi people have nonetheless built their political and social institutions which chronicle and amplify their resistance as well as the distribution of necessity of life. From a socialist point of view, Western Sahara is the front line of anti-imperialist struggle. Morocco's occupation is upheld by alliance with former colonizers such as the US and France, and by supporting the Israel occupation of Palestine. For radicals in Africa, the campaign for Sahrawi freedom must link with a broader struggle against imperialism, resources extraction, land grabs, and commodification of human labor and nature. Solidarity must not be abstract. It must take the form of concrete campaign and measures that exert pressure on government to honor the UN and ICJ's mandate and confront and reject Morocco's occupation. As we mark this milestone over 5 decades of struggle, the lesson is clear. Liberation for Western Sahara would not be gifted from above, but must be won through organized struggle, international solidarity, and the rejection of politics that treats a land as separate from the people who live in it. Our continent's decolonization project is incomplete as long as Western Sahara remains occupied and plundered. This is Spotlight segment on Africa Speaks.
That was our deep dive into the Western Sahara question, one that continues to test the conscience of the African Union and the world. To help us unpack the roots and realities of this long struggle, we move to Expert Speaks, where we are joined by Comrade Maju from Kodesa, the Sahrawi organization defending human rights and in the occupied territories. He shares with us how the people of Western Sahara continue to endure, organize, and resist under occupation. A very good evening to you, comrade. We are having a discussion this week on Africa Speaks, and this is our Expert Speaks segment where we discuss the issues of the day. Today, we are talking about Western Sahara. Western Sahara. On October 31st, we mark the 50th anniversary of the Moroccan occupation, which has continuously has been resisted by the people of Western Sahara. And around that same time, the UN also brought out a Security Council resolution that was passed, and where it was calling on all parties to engage in the discussions on Morocco's autonomy plan without any preconditions. So can you please tell us a bit about the proposal, why it has received such support in recent times, and what the details of the proposal is?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And my name is Mahjoub Maliha. I'm the head of Foreign Affairs Committee of the Collective of Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders, known as CODESA. Of course, I'm pleased to be here with you and salute all of you and your followers. However, following to your question, indeed, Western Sahara is going to be, or it has already passed a half a century of occupation since the Moroccan military invasion to Western Sahara, in complicity of the international community. As you may know, Western Sahara is the last colony of Africa that was occupied by Morocco in 1975. And had military resistance by the Front Polisario, which is the legitimate and sole representative of the Sahrawi people, who picked up the arms to defend their country, defend their people from that hostile military invasion. And after 16 years of war in 1991, the African Union and the United Nations brokered a ceasefire agreement between the parties, back then establishing the MINURSO, which is the UN mission to organize a referendum in Western Sahara. And since 1991, we are still waiting for that referendum to take place to put an end to the occupation in Western Sahara in a decolonization process. Indeed, as you referred to, every year in October, Security Council gather to extend the MINURSO mandate, which is that UN mission that's supposed to organize a referendum. And every time, the penholder in this case is the United States, try to push new or introduce new language, new setup to reframe the decolonization of Western Sahara and deviate from the initial agreed deal supervised by the United Nations and the African Union. So the resolution indeed have called the parties to come to a table to discuss or negotiate a lasting and mutually agreed solution without preconditions, and also that satisfies or acceptable by both parties, and here referring to the Moroccan occupation and the Polisario Front as the representative of the people of Western Sahara. What we have noticed this time that the US have tried very, very hard to deviate from that UN African Union process. and dilute the decolonization and replace it by the so-called autonomy plan proposed by Morocco back in 2007. And fortunately, those attempts has not been successful, as majority of member states of the Security Council have refused to accept the draft zero proposed by the US or the United States. And moving forward, the final version indeed calls the parties to negotiate the autonomy plan proposed by Morocco, but in the same time removed the terminology of the only basis and replaced it by could be or potential basis for negotiation. In the same time, the resolution reaffirms the right to self-determination and extended the mandate for 1 year instead of 3 months as per the initial draft. So, to be more objective, the resolution have been balanced by key member states of the Security Council, and also those who voted in favor have made different statements, highlighting the fact that this resolution cannot be interpreted by any means as recognizing the claimed sovereignty, the Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara. And we have seen also 3 abstentions from key members of the Security Council, China, Russia, and Pakistan, while Algeria didn't participate in the vote, distancing itself from this resolution. However, the resolution text may contradict with the UN Charter and the decolonization law by prioritizing one option and ignoring the Polisario proposal, which was put forward on the 20th of this month. In the same time as CODESA, we have shared our opinion with the Security Council members prior to the vote, requesting fundamental amendments to the proposed text. And at the same time, after the adoption of that Security Council resolution, we have issued a clear statement that highlights those facts that I've been saying, but in the same time reaffirming the self-determination principle, which is a fundamental principle by the UN Charter that needs to be respected, and also the human rights situation in Western Sahara, that the Security Council failed to monitor and protect the human rights of Sahrawi civilians in the occupied territories of Western Sahara, as well as calling for building trust-building measures to be introduced in the process. We have noticed that there is an attempt of prejudging the outcome of a referendum or the decolonization process, or more accurately, the self-determination process, and that is something we do really condemn and call upon the concerned parties to come back to the UN charters and the pre-agreed settlement plan.
I'd want to clarify something. When you're talking, you were talking about the proposal that was put forth some years ago by the Polisario Front that's recognized by the UN. I want to know, how different was the proposal of the Polisario Front then from this particular autonomous plan that has been put in place, and why has it not been considered yet?
No, very valid question. I think you referred to the proposal put forward by Morocco in 2007, and they're trying to remarket it again this year. So this year, the interesting part in the resolution that have been issued by the Security Council is that they call for a genuine autonomy plan. That is itself a recognition or a confession that the autonomy plan proposed years ago is not genuine. So starting from that point, the autonomy plan proposed, it does not satisfy the self-determination, or at least how we see it right now, without putting forward other mechanisms. The fundamental principle here that Polisario is calling for, and so we do, and all the Sahrawi people, is that any solution should have the consent of the Sahrawi people. And the consent of the Sahrawi people can be obtained by only 2 ways. There is no third way for it, whether to have a referendum for the Sahrawis to vote in it, or to have the consent of their legal representative, in this case, the Polisario Front.
Right. And can you tell us the form in which the brutality of the Moroccan occupation come? Can you tell us what kind of impact does it have on the people of Western Sahara, the ordinary people of Western Sahara? What are the impacts of this occupation from the Moroccan people?
Since the invasion, since day one of the invasion, October 31st, 1975, when Morocco decided to brutally annex the territory of Western Sahara and initiated the military campaign against the Sahrawis. And that time, Sahrawis had to flee for their lives. And that's what we have now. The Sahrawi people separated between the occupied territories, the liberated territories, and the refugee camps. And that separation itself, it consists of a crime against international humanitarian law by basically violating the national unity and the territorial integrity of Western Sahara. What followed that invasion is a systematic colonial strategies or policies that has been implemented in the territory of Western Sahara from can vary from oppression, physical abuses, killing outside the law, mass graves even during the wartime back in the 70s and the 80s. But then after the ceasefire agreement that was signed in 1991, it was another form of oppression, illegal or arbitrary detention and imprisonment of anyone who dared to raise voice supporting the will and the wishes of the Sahrawi people for self-determination, which is a fundamental right granted and guaranteed by the United Nations. And here I refer to the Resolution 1514 that was issued by the General Assembly calling for that right for the Sahrawi people. We have a legal opinion from the International Court of Justice, followed by many, many legal opinions, including recently in the last 10 years, we had 6 rulings from the European Court of Justice reaffirming that and denying any claims of sovereignty for Morocco. In the same time, we have a resolution from the African Court for People and Human Rights that was reaffirmed that right and denied Morocco's claims over Western Sahara. Back to the abuses and the systematic occupation policies, we have a demographic engineering and demographic transfer in Western Sahara, where Morocco tried to push thousands and thousands of settlers into the territory until the Sahrawi became minority in their own land. And that is also another crime as per the international humanitarian law and the law of occupation itself. We have human rights defenders and activists, political activists as well, targeted on a systematic basis, put in jail for long periods. We have groups serving life sentences of activists who are in Moroccan jails. We have systematic discrimination and exclusion strategies, basically forcing what they call the enforced allegiance on the Sahrawis. If you support Morocco's occupation, you can have access to bread and jobs. If you don't, then you are excluded from any opportunity. So I can keep going in many functions and discriminations and violations against the human rights, basic human rights of the Sahrawi people. But we have been for half century separated. Every family have relatives on the other side of the wall, a separation wall that divide Western Sahara to east and west of the berm, or the separation wall. And that is an ongoing crime as well. That wall is equipped with millions of landmines, anti-personnel and anti-vehicles. So the situation in Western Sahara in general is very, very critical. While Morocco is denying access to any kind of international observers, including the United Nations special rapporteurs or mechanisms, that has no access to to the territory. And for the
Right.
International Human Rights Organization, Western Sahara is a dark spot.
Right. So let's please still stay on the effect that the occupation of the Moroccan people is having on the people of Western Sahara. Apart from the direct impact that it have, the physical impact that it has on the people of Western Sahara, can you delve a bit into the economic aspects of the occupation? How is Morocco exploiting Western Sahara's resources?
Yeah, very, very valid question, because the main drive behind occupation are the natural resources in Western Sahara. Western Sahara is a very, very rich territory or country with, whether it is minerals from phosphate, gold, and other minerals, valuable minerals, to its long coastline along the Atlantic with a very rich fish reserves that everyone is fishing there. It's basically feeding the entire European Union with its fish reserves. It is a very good location for renewable energy production, whether it is wind energy or solar energy. So Morocco is investing on that to accelerate the exploitation of natural resources involving multinational companies. So, in an attempt to satisfy the new colonialism or the new imperialists around the world, but at the same time to internationalize the occupation, and that everyone complicit in that occupation guarantee their political support when it comes to the Security Council of the United Nations. And we have seen that clearly with the first draft of the resolution proposed by the United States. Morocco continues to plunder the natural resources in Western Sahara, despite what I referred to before, rulings from the European Court of Justice saying that any exploitation of natural resources must have the consent of the Sahara people. That consent never been obtained, and they still engage in the exploitation of natural resources against the will of the Sahara people. In the same time, excluding the Sahrawis from expressing their will or not for those so-called investments.
Right, Comrade, thank you very much. We are gradually drawing to the end of this exciting conversation to know the struggle of the people of Western Sahara. So 50 years of occupation, how is the resistance movement in Western Sahara? How do people organize around this difficult situation? And also, how can you link the struggle of the Western Sahara people to those that are happening in Sudan and in Palestine? How is this struggle, how are these struggles interconnected? And what can people's movements do, especially in Africa, do to, support this struggle for self-determination?
I believe the question of Western Sahara is related to any question around the world, any just cause around the world. And I believe that we are all responsible for the injustice going on, and we are also responsible to end that injustice, whether it is in Western Sahara, in Palestine, or anywhere else in the world. And for us as Africans, of course, Western Sahara is the last colony in Africa, and that should be put to an end. And Western Sahara must be liberated, or at least the people of Western Sahara must obtain their right or exercise their fundamental right to self-determination. So what we need now is, as you know, Sahrawi Republic is a full member, a founding member of the African Union, and the African Union remains basically pushed aside from that question, while the African Union should play a key role in decolonizing Western Sahara. All people and all free voices around the world are called upon to join the resistance and join the struggle of the Sahrawi people, because and as we say, Western Sahara is basically the last test for the international community, and also the last test of the credibility of the current or existing international order. The Sahrawi people, of course, they rely most and for all on their representative, Polisario Front, who is basically the responsible number one on defending the rights and the wills and the interests of the Sahrawi people. But as well, the Sahrawis are joining their their representative in fighting, resisting the occupation by all means necessary or by all means possible. We see, of course, the Sahrawi civilians in trying to raise awareness about the question of Western Sahara. And therefore, we call upon our comrades and our African compatriots to stand with us in our resistance, because that is the last front that the Africans should defend now and today.
Right. Thank you very much, Comrade. Indeed, Africans should rally behind the struggles, supporting the struggle of the Western Sahara people for their self-determination and sovereignty. Thank you so much for having you today. And those were powerful insights right there from Comrade Majub. A reminder that occupation is not just a political question, but a human one. And voices, we hear from those who live that reality every day through the lens of human rights and health. Two perspectives, one shared truth, that occupation affects every aspect of life.
Je tiens à vous référer au rapport réalisé par notre organisation en dernier temps, intitulé 50 ans d'occupation marocaine au Sahara occidental, confiscation continue du droit du peuple sahraoui à l'autodétermination et à la souveraineté sur ses ressources naturelles. Bon, en résumé, ce rapport a été subdivisé en deux grandes parties. Ces deux grandes parties, bien sûr, ils couvrent toute la période depuis l'invasion du territoire du Sahara occidental au 31 octobre 1975 et jusqu'à aujourd'hui, c'est-à-dire octobre 2025. Bien sûr, nous sommes déjà en novembre 2025, mais le rapport couvre jusqu'à octobre 2025. Bon, on a subdivisé ce rapport en deux parties brièvement. La première partie, elle couvre la période allant du 31 octobre 1975 jusqu'au 1er avril 2007. Pour cette période, le rapport a essayé de résumer ou faire un récapitulatif des crimes de guerre et des crimes contre l'humanité et les génocides qui ont été perpétrés contre les civils sahraouis pendant cette période, en se basant, parce que la documentation est un peu rare et un peu bon, en se basant en premier lieu sur le rapport qu'a réalisé l'instance équité et réconciliation. C'est une instance marocaine. Donc l'instance équité et réconciliation, vous l'avez avec le rapport si vous voulez, c'est l'annexe numéro 1 avec le rapport du CODESA. Donc cette instance a essayé de reconnaître un ensemble de chiffres de crimes commis pendant la première période citée, c'est-à-dire 31 octobre jusqu'au avril 2007. Donc, dans le rapport, vous avez avec les chiffres, donc le nombre va jusqu'à 375 disparitions forcées, disparues forcément, Sahraouis, 375, dont 80 femmes. La deuxième partie du rapport couvre la période allant de, je pense, 1er mai 2007 et jusqu'à octobre 2025. Pour cette deuxième partie, le rapport se base sur les rapports et les déclarations du CODESA, notre organisation, les rapports et les déclarations, ces rapports qui peuvent être soit mensuels ou annuels. Donc, c'est basé sur ces rapports, ces déclarations, les témoignages des activistes, donc, qui sont enregistrés chez notre organisation. Donc, cette période, la deuxième période, je veux dire, est aussi très grave, avec aussi des crimes contre l'humanité. Je cite très bien, brièvement, les attaques de drones. Bon, la première partie, là, bon, la première partie, donc il y a toujours les enlèvements, la présentation des civils dans des procès illégaux, soit militaires, soit civils, qui ne respectent pas les normes des procès légaux, donc des tensions, des agressions physiques et verbales, l'harcèlement, les violations sexuelles et le harcèlement. Donc, toutes sortes de crimes, donc blocage, inhibition des manifestations, limitation de la circulation libre, siège des maisons des activistes, plus le blocus exercé sur tout le territoire. Donc, sur le rapport, vous avez les chiffres d'observateurs étrangers qui ont été exclus de l'aéroport Hassan I, des journalistes, des activistes de droits de l'homme et même des députés européens qui ont été exclus et inhibés d'entrer le territoire. Donc, brièvement, c'est ça. Après, bon, oui, aussi, il faut bien noter qu'à partir de la violation du cessez-le-feu, c'est-à-dire novembre 2020, après la violation du cessez-le-feu, la puissance coloniale marocaine utilise des drones contre les civils. Il a exécuté plusieurs civils sahraouis, mauritaniens et aussi algériens dans les territoires du Sahara occidental. Donc, tout est marqué avec les noms et avec les dates. Et même les Nations Unies a observé certaines attaques. Donc, sur notre rapport, tout est détaillé. Donc, en chiffres. Bien sûr, il utilise aussi des armes qui sont prohibées dans le droit international. Ça, en bref, la deuxième partie, bien sûr, dans le rapport, c'est en détail avec des chiffres. Le rapport du CODESA, j'ai dit, à l'occasion de 50 années d'occupation du Sahara occidental, il est apparu cette dernière semaine. Donc, bref, c'est ça. Donc, tout ça, bien sûr, il est en liaison avec la violation principale, c'est-à-dire la violation du peuple sahraoui à son droit à une autodétermination à travers un référendum transparent et libre pour laisser les Sahraouis choisir leur sort, sachant que leur cause, la cause sahraoui, est marquée et enregistrée dans les dossiers de 4e communauté des Nations Unies comme un pays non autonome, donc un territoire non autonome qui n'a pas encore profité de son droit à l'autodétermination. Donc, ce viol de ce droit inaliénable est la principale cause de tous les autres crimes qui découlent de ce problème. Donc, les civils sahraouis attendent depuis plus de 50 ans ce droit pour être libres comme les autres peuples du monde. Donc, ça, c'est bref, notre rapport. Donc, aussi, et j'ai oublié de citer que la puissance coloniale marocaine agit d'une manière systématique au pillage de toutes les ressources du peuple sahraoui, aussi ces dernières années, donc ces 2 dernières années, il a saccagé des biens de Sahraouis, des maisons de Sahraouis dans les banlieues les villes de Sahara occidental, qui vivaient dans ces banlieues, ça constitue ces banlieues, ça c'est le lieu de leur subsistance de vie. Donc, ça c'est encore des crimes contre l'humanité qui s'ajoutent aux autres crimes qui sont toujours systématiques depuis 1975 et jusqu'aujourd'hui.
The struggle in Western Sahara resonates across Africa because the logic of domination is the same. And now let's turn to dispatches from Africa, where we take a look at other stories shaping our region, where we look at recent elections on our continent and their deeper meaning for sovereignty and people's power. In Tanzania, the October 29th election saw President Samia Suluhu Hassan win with a said 97% of the vote. But the working people of Tanzania say the vote failed democratic standards amid repression and exclusion. In Cameroon, the October 12 election re-elected President Paul Biya at age 92, extending 4 decades of rule despite youth disillusionment and protest. And in Cote d'Ivoire, President Alassane Ouattara secured a 4th term with over 89% of the vote. But turnout was low and opposition was bad, highlighting how political systems remain skewed. These cases show that elections alone do not mean liberation. They can mask deeper patterns of control.
Okay, greetings, comrade from Pan-African Television. Thanks for having me. Well, this is Muhemsi Mwakiwelo, a member, of course, as well as a leader of the Tanzania Socialist Forum. So I'm speaking from Dar es Salaam, a hotspot of recent, political turmoil in the country. So generally speaking, the mood is still somber here, and there's a lot of uncertainties. Although things have started to become normal, but still there's a lot of limitations, starting from the food shortages and so on and so forth. But the real problem that we are facing now is the uncertainty of the security. As you know, on 29th of October, we had general elections as per our constitutions, but that elections ended up with violence, like real violence. In my view, the genesis of violence have got everything to do with how the state chose to engage with people who are literally dissatisfied with the whole electoral process, as well as how our country is being governed by the current regime or the current administration, or whatever you can call it. But before elections, we know that there has been a lot of grievances from people of all walks of life, because there has been that notion that it's only the oppositions that has been having sentiments. No, in my view, even ordinary people have got a lot of sentiments against, the government. You see it. So elections itself, there has been a lot of, as I said earlier, dissatisfaction on how it's being organized. So a lot of people have been thinking and, of course, demanding the reform of the whole electoral system in the country, because they feel like it is not impartial at all. It has been always working biased against the opposition, as well as paying no heed at all to the wishes of the majority in the country. So they have been calling of reforms, of electoral system reforms, for many, many years, ever since we re-embarked on the multi-party systems back in 1992. So this call has been ignored by the state, and if there were concessions that were made, they were just minimal concession to the extent that people, they feel like the state has deliberately been ignored people's who were calling for reforms of the electoral system. But beyond that, there has been not just the satisfactions, but as well as demands by the masses, especially on how our government, how our country has been run by the government, which has been always from the same political party from the days of independence, 1961 in Tanganyika, then after the union, which brought about Tanzania in 1964, and after the merging of two parties from Zanzibar and mainland Tanzania, and creating the CCM. But originally, it is founded by the party that bring about independence in both Tanganyika and Zanzibar. So it's the same party. So people have been, have got their demands in terms of, there should be a change on how we run our country. One thing that I'm scared of is the retaliation of the state. It stands, and as far as I know, the retaliation will affect the working class, because so far, I doubt if our state is clear about what is the cause of the demonstration. To them, they are just corrupt young people, and they've been even saying that these are the people that come out of Tanzania. They are not Tanzanians, so they can retaliate very violent, which is scary in many ways. But I don't see the change of cause of events in Tanzania in terms of how this government will work, because it's a pro-capitalist government. It's a government that is being, captured by the business cluster of the country, of which they'll continue to secure and defend the interests, obvious at the masses of the people. So in terms of the concessions to the masses, I don't see there will be a willing concessions by the state or by the government or by this administration to the masses, unless the masses will learn how to match the thrust and capitalize the message that was sent by this demonstration to continue, advance, and push for the state to heed their demands. So there is nothing new, just like it was in the last term. There won't be anything new in terms of concessions to the working class. And by the way, during campaigns, the campaigns was funded by the business cluster of the country, of which they have business and trade interests, of which they will need to, to repay themselves in that sense. So, so to speak, almost 100 billions was fundraised. 100 billion Tanzanian shillings now was funded. It's like 50 million USD for the campaigns. So these are the people who have got their business enterprise and so on and so forth. But as well as the pressure from the so-called international community, and by this I mean the EU and the West, would mean that the government will give more concessions to the West so that they can minimize the pressure to the government, especially to condemn them for the elections and its results, the violence and so on. So it's like they would trade the so-called democracy in exchange for the business interest or economic interest of the West. That's what is going to happen in my calculation. So there won't be much concessions willingly from the government. And in a contrary, there will be concessions to the business class of the country as well as the West in exchange to the minimization of the pressure by the West to the government. That's what I see. And in meantime, the retaliation by the state will be very high. People will continue to be arrested and detained and charged with very serious charges, including treasons, economic sabotage, terrorism, and so on and so forth, because that has been the game as far as the history of modern Tanzania is concerned. In a moment like this, the government will always try to find scapegoats. And who are the best scapegoats? Obvious, the working masses and the underprivileged of this country. That's what I see.
I will thank the Pan-African Television for this opportunity this gave me to express myself on our election. I think that in reality, this election is not really an election because it liked a football match without opponents. For us, it's a shame for Africa because after 15 years of makeshift democracy, we feel that we had the occasion to pass to have a democratic process to change our government. Unfortunately, is not what I assist. For the majority of people in Cote d'Ivoire, this election was, I can say, was like a comedy, I think that's like damage for us because we stop the process we can allow us to transform democratically our country. So when we saw what happening in Ghana, in Senegal, we have, I can say, passed the good occasions to transform our democracy. I think that we regret it. We think that Cote d'Ivoire political, I can say, people haven't did the good, I can say, good step to transform the country. What I can say. For me, I like a progress. I think that we have to fight. We have the works people, the people in Cote d'Ivoire have to fight to transform, to have the democratic process in the future, in the few years for the next step, because this election is not really an election. I think that when you say Ouattara is still on the government cause because more people are not education, more people, I can say no more people, but a part of people are not know the challenge of to change the government, and secondly use we are the Ouattara army and how Ouattara came on the power. So the processes in the past are afraid people. So I think that and now people are wake up. People are slowly wake up to change. It's not strongly, but I think that is the process. When I say that in the next step, in the next year, and the next 2 years, and the few years, these people will be wake up to ask that they change, to ask that the democracy process. I think that the issue of this, I can say, this election, or the issue of the people in the few years is to reclaim the changement in our country. So I think that what will be happen in the few years, I'm very sure that the people will wake up. the people want the changement, but how to attain this changement is what is very difficult. But I'm sure, I'm very sure that this changement will be arrived in the few years.
And up next is our word of the day, which is occupation. Because whether it is a land under foreign boots or a state under one-party rule, the effect is the same. The people are denying power over their future. Our word of the day today is occupation, a term that speaks not only to physical control of land, but also the domination of people, resources, and future. Occupation is the tool through which empires maintain power long after colonialism has supposedly fallen. It is the continuation of control by other means, military, economic, and ideological. Across Africa, we know the pain and resistance that come with occupation. From the British in Kenya and the French in Algeria to the Portuguese in Angola and Mozambique, our lands were seized, our labor exploited, and our sovereignty denied. Occupation by various forces continues until today. In Western Sahara, Africa's last colony, Morocco occupies Sahrawi land despite clear rulings from the International Court of Justice affirming the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination. For decades, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic has fought for recognition and liberation, while multinational corporations extract phosphate and fish from occupied territory, feeding foreign profits instead of local needs. Although the African Union officially recognizes the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, political divisions within Africa have weakened its stance. Some member states now support Morocco's so-called autonomy plan, a policy viewed by liberation movement as a colonial compromise designed to normalize occupation. External economic and diplomatic pressures continue to shape Africa's position on matters of justice and sovereignty. Beyond Africa, the struggle of Palestine mirrors our own. For over 75 years, the Palestinian people have endured dispossession, apartheid, and military occupation by Israel. This occupation is defined by the illegal settlement carving up Palestinian land, the systematic control of water, movement, and trade, and the criminalization of their very existence. The parallels between Gaza and Shabelle, between Ramallah and Soweto, are not accidental. They are products of the same global systems that value profit and power over justice and humanity. Occupation is not always enforced with guns. It is also economic. Many African nations remain occupied by debt, bound by structural adjustment programs imposed by the IMF and the World Bank, forced to prioritize loan repayment over public welfare. Our currencies are pegged, our markets dictated, and our policies constrained, all in the name of development. As Nkrumah warned us, political independence is meaningless unless it is accompanied by economic independence. Yet, resistance persists. From the Polisario Front in Western Sahara to the Global Solidarity Network standing with Palestine, from youth-led movements in Sudan and Congo, resisting foreign-backed military regimes, to communities reclaiming land from corporation control, the fight against occupation continues. Occupation reminds us that the liberation of one people is tied to the liberation of all. As the late Thomas Sankara said, we must dare to invent. The future cannot coexist with occupation in any form, whether it be territorial, economic, or cultural. True Pan-Africanism stands shoulder to shoulder with all oppressed peoples, from Lyon to Gaza, from Kinshasa to Johannesburg, declaring that with one voice, Africa's freedom is incomplete while other remains unfree. This has been the word of the day on Africa Speaks right here on Pan-African Television. My name is Victoria Wilson, reminding you that the struggle against occupation is part of the greater fight for justice, equality, and self-determination across our world. Occupation sparks resistance. In history, we revisit Operation Carlota in Angola in 1975, the Cuban-Angolan solidarity that helped repulse invasion and defend African self-determination. A reminder that our solidarity across borders matters. Years ago, on November 5th, 1975, revolutionary Cuba took the historic decision to support the Angolan liberation struggle, which was under attack by South Africa and Western countries. The resulting Operation Carlota would go down in history as a historic instance of solidarity and resistance. At the beginning of November 1975, Angola was on the verge of gaining independence after centuries of Portuguese rule. However, the leading liberation force, the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA, under Agostinho Neto, faced a major assault by armed groups backed by apartheid South Africa and the United States, with South African forces directly entering the country and advancing rapidly. The MPLA appealed for help and Cuba's response was immediate. Operation Carlota was launched and within 2 days, 82 soldiers set out for Angola. By the end of the year, 10,000 Cuban troops joined the battle. The operation was named after Carlota, an enslaved woman working in a plantation who on November 5, 1843, launched a rebellion in Cuba's Matanzas region. For Fidel Castro, defending Angola and Africa was a duty. He was actively involved, sometimes spending up to 14 hours a day on strategy and keeping in touch with the MPLA leadership. Operation Carlota had an immediate impact. By the end of 1975, South African soldiers were retreating. Over the next 13 years, Cuban and Angolans fought shoulder to shoulder, inflicting heavy defeats on rebel armies. The Cuban efforts also had a decisive impact on the independence of Namibia and the fall of apartheid in South Africa. Operation Carlota culminated in the history Battle of Quito Carnival, which forced the South Africans to finally retreat, leading to peace talks. Nelson Mandela also called the battle later a turning point in the liberation of Africa and the South African people. Over 300,000 Cubans took part in Operation Carlota, and over 2,000 sacrificed their lives. Cuba also sent hundreds of teachers and doctors who helped Angola rebuild, and a large number of Angolan students received scholarships to study in Cuba. Operation Carlota demonstrated the power of revolutionary internationalism and a common thread that bind together a struggle across the continent. The operation played an important role in the defeat of apartheid and all its tentacles throughout Southern Africa. As Fidel said, whoever is not capable of fighting for others will never be capable of fighting for himself. From Western Sahara to Angola, from elections rigged to community silence, the lessons remain. Our fight is for freedom, dignity, and control over our destiny. That's the essence of Pan-Africanism. Thank you very much for joining us on today's edition of Africa Speaks. My name is Victoria Wilson. And until we meet again, keep the flames of unity burning. Do have a good evening.